各位傳媒朋友，早晨。
Good morning, friends from the media. Welcome to today's press briefing. The Chief Executive will give you a PowerPoint presentation before answering questions. Because of the epidemic, please stay socially distanced. We'll first hear from the Chief Executive. Friends from the media, members of Hong Kong public, good morning. In a few days, that will be the end of In a day or so, that will be the end of 2021. I wish you all a prosperous and healthy new year. I will take this chance to take stock of the work of the government in 2021. There has been a lot of work taken up by the government in the past year, so I will only outline the salient areas. The first area of work is, of course, to fight against COVID-19. You can see from this chart that in the past year, the virus has been ravaging the whole world. In view of Omicron, the latest variant of the virus, there has been numerous outbreaks. Some describe them as outbreak in the form of tsunamis. Every day we see over 1 million new infected cases. However, we still have a good record. We are one of the areas with the lowest infection cases. Per 1 million people, we are in the lowest 20th percentile on average. The number of fatalities is also low, but unfortunately, they have affected elderly people and those with chronic illness. We have done a lot of work in order to achieve zero local infection. These efforts come in the form of testing of the virus. You can see that for the year as a whole, we have tested over 23.5 million times. We have a population of 7 million. That means on average, everyone has done 3 tests. For some, they have done dozens. This is a number that is 300 times more than the previous year. The other regular testing is in relation to sewage. This is a breakthrough in relation to the use of technology. We have regular monitoring locations covering 112 locations covering about 5.3 million people. The team is led by the Hong Kong University. They work tirelessly with our Drainage Services Department and other government departments to maintain their work. Another area is the vaccination program starting in February. I was the first person to get vaccinated. As at 29th of December, we have administered free of charge close to 10 million doses. For those who have received 2 doses, the vaccination rate is less than 70%. It's 69.1%, and I've always said that this is not satisfactory. A key area of our work for the next year is to enhance the vaccination rate. We have launched a program to administer the third jab, and now close to about 370,000 people have received their 3rd dose. Another area of work is the full implementation of the one country, 2 systems. A key area of work in the past year is to implement the national security law promulgated on the 30th of June the year before. This effectively stop and punish activities that endanger national security. The court has made a number of rulings. So the provisions of the national security law has been fully explained by the court. Another area of work is to review areas of legislations related to the national security law. We have just passed the Personal Data Privacy Ordinance, the Film Censorship Ordinance, and the development of a real name registration system for phone SIM cards. Well, there is also the oath-taking for civil servants. In the past year, we have covered politically appointed officials, civil servants, other government employees, members of the election committee, as well as district councillors. According to the national security law, there are also other groups that will have to take their oaths. Another area is the promotion of our constitution, the basic law, as well as the national security law and civic education. The next area was the number of elections held successfully pursuant to the improvement of our electoral system. That is the September 19th ECC subsector election, as well as the LegCo general election conducted on the 19th of December. I would like to highlight our next area of work because it's often being criticized by overseas medias about whether we have safeguarded our rule of law. We have actually done so staunchly. January 2021, the new Chief Justice, Mr. Andrew Jung, has took office. He has fearlessly faced the challenges, and a number of measures have been put in place to effectively shorten the waiting time, and we've also applied for an injunction from the court against doxing. In my capacity as the Chief Executive, I continue to appoint a number of overseas non-permanent judges. I have appointed one and altogether renew the term of 5 other overseas non-permanent judges. I would like to express my gratitude towards the overseas non-permanent judges. They face pressure, yet they were happy to accept the renewal and the appointment to safeguard our rule of law. Another area is a program named Vision 2030, Rule of Law, conducted by the Department of Justice. We have seen a number of occasions when people have smeared the facts and tried to mislead our youngsters, so we need to do more in this regard. In the past year, we have cooperated with a number of international organizations on a number of occasions. At the beginning of this month, we have conducted an annual meeting of an international event. Premier Li Keqiang spoke at the opening ceremony of this internationally well-known event. And it was also announced that an arbitration center under this organization will be set up in Hong Kong, the first time in its record.
Well, the other thing is the economy. In 2020, we saw a contraction down by 6.4%, but I'm glad to say that in 2021, the economy staged a rebound, and that has to do with the control of the pandemic, and we've seen an increase of the GDP of 7.2%. Throughout the year it's going to be 6.4%, and jobless rate has also seen an improvement. In another chart, you can see that the line is plummeting pretty quickly. 7.2 in the early part of the year was a new high. It has come down to 4.1%. Underemployment also dropped pretty sharply to 1.8%. So in society, there are some enterprises that are suffering from a shortage of manpower. In 2022, manpower is going to be an issue that we have to contend with. Also, in terms of economic recovery, we've seen this across different sectors. Import and export of goods stage a rebound because of the internal circulation or dual circulation and the demand for goods in the first 11 months. Import and export volume reached $9.2 trillion, which is 13.6 higher than that in 2018. We've seen a double-digit growth. Export 26.5%. Import a rise of 24.9%. In the equity market, we've seen a pretty good development there. IPO, we haven't reached the top 3, but in terms of the volume, it is close to $300 and $200 billion, 4th in the world. In terms of the turnover, the daily turnover is 30%, and it is $168 billion now in the bond market, in particular the green bond market. It is very strong, and we have close to $200 billion or US dollars and a rise of 1.6%. In the property market, in the first 11 months, the transaction in the primary and secondary market, we've seen a transaction of 69,152, close to 70,000, or 29% rise compared with the previous year. In December, it is still very robust. We've seen a rise in the property prices, but over the past 2 months, it has dropped a little bit. In the 11 months of this year, there has been a rise of 3%. The peak happened in August, and thereafter we've seen a slight decline. In 2021, we integrated into the mainland development with deepened cooperation. During my duty visit, President Xi Jinping also said that he was delighted to see that Hong Kong was becoming integrated into the national development, and we have deepened our cooperation with the mainland. In March, there was the 14th five-year plan, and there was some support expressed for 8 centers in Hong Kong. We also have the Shanghai plan for modern service industry, a lot of opportunities there. And for the Connect scheme, in the that there is the A-share futures contract. We also have the Wealth Management Connect, and also the Southbound Bond Connect, and Shenzhen Municipal Government is also issuing bonds in Hong Kong. For the GBA, we have stepped up the cooperation between Guangdong, Hong Kong, Shenzhen, and Zhuhai. We have also launched the development of the technology innovation park, and also the co-location plan in Huanggang port. We have established a high-level meeting cooperation mechanism with the Hubei province, and in November I visited Hubei, Wuhan, to attend the meeting. We've also started meetings with Guangdong, Shanghai, and Sichuan, and take forward the development there. This is the centenary of the Communist Party of China, and a lot of activities have been organized in celebration of that. In 2021, we have seen a change in the relationship between the executive and the legislature. In the extended electoral tenure, it was really a fruitful year. In that year, we didn't see any more filibustering. We didn't hear any more of the quorum bells, and the efficiency has been ramped up dramatically. And this is standing us in good stead in terms of livelihood and economically. we have endorsed 46 bills in that year proposed by the administration. Normally, the norm is 20. We have seen a double of that. And there are some bills that have been controversial for many years, like the import of non-locally trained doctors, the MSW charging, and also the banning of electronic cigarettes. And we're grateful to LegCo for that. In terms of disbursement of funding, $320 billion have been earmarked for the work in Hong Kong. And given this good interaction, I have, in my capacity as chief executive, endorsed 2 private members' bills as a gesture of respect for LegCo. And in 2021, it is a year that is very stimulating. We have seen a lot of positive energy, and I'm grateful to the elite athletes in Hong Kong. In the Tokyo Olympics, they have achieved really marvelous results. We have achieved the first gold since the handover. We have 1 gold, 2 silver, and 3 bronze. And in the Paralympics and also the National Paralympics, we have clinched 29 additional medals. And in an unprecedented way, we have acquired the broadcast right of the Tokyo Olympic and also the Paralympic for 5 broadcasters to broadcast for well over 3,000 hours. People were able to watch all these events participated by Hong Kong people, and we have enhanced the enthusiasm in this regard. The mainland is also in support of our development in our sports in the national game. It was agreed that the 5th national game will be organized, and this will be participated in Hong Kong, by Hong Kong. Chiffon Haughey has also achieved a breakthrough in world record in the 200-meter freestyle. And we've also had athletes from the mainland visiting Hong Kong, and the aerospace scientists also visiting Hong Kong, and there were exchanges between Hong Kong students and the astronauts in space. All these are stimulating.
I'll quickly go over our work in the coming year, 2022. There is a large amount of work, but first and foremost is to fight against the pandemic. We will continue to vigorously control the pandemic and try to get our borders open again. We will try to boost the vaccination rate. For the former, we are quite optimistic, and I look forward to giving you the good news. For the latter, in 2022, we have to put in more of an effort to boost our vaccination rate in order to build a better barrier against the virus. In the 2021 policy address as well as the supplement, there are about 310 initiatives, and I will later give you more information. In the policy address, there is also the proposal of the Northern Metropolis. It's been very well received. Questions asked are about when it will happen. So we will operate at full steam to make it happen. After that, of course, we will continue to perform our constitutional duty and to properly protect our national security. Does include starting the legislation for Article 23 of the Basic Law. We hope that before the 30th of June, we will be able to start a discussion. After the improved electoral system, we have already conducted successfully two elections, and on the 27th of March we will see the last one, the chief executive election. After that, there will be the change of government. We need the assistance of the current term of government to make it effective. We have now formed the 7th LegCo term with patriots administering Hong Kong. We will continue to build on the good relationship with the legislature. At the same time, we will take forward the initiatives under the 14th five-year plan in relation to the 8 new centers. Previously, I have made a proposal of government reorganization. It looks like that before the end of March, we will be able to come up with a proposal to create a new bureau. I plan that in the first council meeting on the 12th of June, I will announce the details of the reorganization plan that's been brewing for 3 months. Yesterday, the Chief Secretary has already started the launch of the series of celebratory activities for the celebration of the 25th anniversary of reunification. Lastly, which is close to the heart of a lot of people, is housing. Next year, we will continue to do our best to increase housing supply, to put a decent roof over the heads of Hong Kong people. Well, since the delivery of the policy address, I will now take this chance to give you more information about the work that we have embarked upon. First, the first 10-year housing plan. We have identified all 350 sites. But as I've said, that for the 300,000 housing units, perhaps there will be less housing units being churned out at the beginning and more at a later stage. I'll see if we can expedite our work for the first 5 years. The work of the first 5 year has been submitted to me. We are talking about close to 200,000 units and 120 projects. Sometimes we will need to rely on streamlining the statutory procedure. In the first quarter of next year, the Development Bureau will submit a proposal to the LegCo about streamlining various statutory procedures. There are 5 important ones. That includes the Town Planning Ordinance, the Land Resumption Ordinance, the Foreshore and Seabed Reclamation Ordinance, Environmental Impact Assessment Ordinance, as well as a Road Works Use and Compensation Ordinance. Progress is encouraging. We will be able to disclose the details of our proposal in the first quarter of next year. Another area of work for the next year is that for the first time ever, we have introduced a requirement of the minimum size of units. This was done in the 4th quarter government land sale program in 2021 and 22. Today at about 4:30, when the Secretary for Development make the announcement for the government land sale program for the 4th quarter, you will hear more details. And in relation to the review of Chow Tong land, the Secretary for Home Affairs has already announced the plan to convene the first meeting. In relation to the use of MIC, modular integrated construction, the Housing Department has announced that they will make use of MIC in 4 of their housing projects. They have now identified a possibility to use MIC in an additional 20,000 public housing units. I will now move on to our housing plan for next year. We will, in terms of home ownership scheme units, we will sell 8,900 units. In relation to green form subsidized home ownership scheme units, there will be 4,700. That means altogether 13,600 such units. Including that, it means that for government subsidized flat for sale, the amount supplied will be 38,300, which is 400 times more than the previous term of government. This is something that we have achieved in order to provide better housing for the general public. Well, for these home ownership scheme units, it covers 7 residential complexes over Hong Kong Island, Kowloon, and New Territories. There are altogether 8,900 of them with various sizes and affordable prices. In 2018, I've announced a new price setting mechanism. I said at that time that the new mechanism will see the price depict from market rate, and it will instead be pegged with the affordability, the median income of household. After the announcement of the new price setting mechanism, we see that in the private market, the prices have increased by a double digit. But median income for households has actually dropped. If we use the old system, that means the price of HOS units will be higher. But because of the new mechanism, it will not be more expensive. Under the Green Form scheme, there will be a further discount. Under the Green Form subsidized housing scheme, there are 3 residential complexes covering about 4,700 units. As you can see from this, the distribution of various programs. The orange ones are HOS flats, and the green ones are Green Form subsidized HOS flats. Let me give you a better idea of how affordable these units are. Well, for the HOS 2022, the current discount will be 49%. Will be discounted by 49%. As I told you just before, that median household income has been decreasing. And this discount rate is actually the highest since we have resumed the sale of HOS in 2014. So the cheapest flat will be pitched at 1.24 million. Let me give you an example. It's On-South Court in Kwun Tong. It's a unit of 400 square feet. It's sold for $2.79 million. Under the old system, it will fetch it will be sold for $3.83 million. Assuming that there is a 10% deposit, that means you only have to make a down payment of $279,000 with a monthly contribution towards mortgage at $11,900. Under the Green Form scheme, there will be a further 10% off. That means that the discount rate will be 59%. It is the highest discount rate since 2016. The cheapest flat will be sold at $790,000. Let me give you an example. Ko Wang Court in Yau Tong is a flat of about 290 square feet. Under the current mechanism, it will be sold at $1.77 million. Assuming a 95% mortgage, with a repayment term of 25 years, interest rate at 3%. The down payment is only $88,500 with a monthly payment towards a mortgage at $8,500.
Another measure that we announced today is for GHS. It is intended for those residing in PRH units so that we can free up new units for redistribution. But the phenomenon is that those residing in PRH units, so they would like to have bigger units. So we have an overhang of the GHS units. According to the usual practice, we'll leave them to the next year until we sell them all. But there are drawbacks with regard to this because we'll lock up all the housing resources. Also, there are some people who wish to get on the housing ladder, and they've never lived in the PRH units, and they want to get on the housing ladder without moving into the PRH units. Now, a monthly mortgage payment of $8,000, I'm sure a lot of people on the waiting list that would be able to afford. So for this tranche of GHS units, there is an overhang of this at the present moment. We will be using this overhang of GHS units and open this up to those who are on the waiting list for more than 1 year. And I'm sure that the demand will outstrip supply, but at least there will be an opportunity for them to go straight to the GHS units without having to wait for the PRH units. Now, usually, the GHS units will be available to those PRH tenants and also those who have been on the queue for a long time, and they're close to getting an offer. Now, for those who are close to an offer, they would rather go into the PRH units. Now we are opening this up to those who are on the waiting list for more than a year. Now, this is a pilot scheme. It depends on how popular it's going to be, and it depends on the execution. We will be reviewing this, but at least for the overhang of GHS units, we will be opening them up. Another measure that we announced today is to tie in with our usual mindset. The housing stock is for living, not for speculation. So for HOS or GHS, since 2022, there will be a tightening up of the requirement. The owners now can sell the units. The limitation will be extended from 2 years to 5 years. By the 6th year, the owner can dispose of the units in the open market, but within the 5 years, they can only sell them to eligible people. Now, if they want to sell in the open market after paying the premium, the measure will be extended to 15 years. In other words, within 15 years, they cannot pay the premium and dispose of the units in the open market. This is to ensure that the precious housing resources will be confined to those who are really in need. So the Housing Authority will be proceeding according to this policy, and they will be dealing with the GHS units and HOS units that will be sold in 2022. Housing remains our priority. That's why I devote a lot more coverage to this. But for the other parts of work, we've also achieved a pretty good progress. And on 12th of January, I will be giving further details. I throw the floor open for questions. Please raise your hand. When you get the floor, please identify yourself, the organization you work for. The lady at the back, please. Hong Kong 01. There are 3 parts to my question. First, you've gone to Beijing for a duty visit, and President Xi gave good recognition to your work. And how do you view your work in your term? Are you going to seek another term in office? And also, together with Apple Daily, Stand News also closed, and there are 2 opposition news outlets that have been closed. Do you count this as one of your achievements? Do you think this is a present for the central government in the 20th anniversary? And what advice do you have to your successor as to how we can resolve the social confrontations and tensions? And you mentioned all these housing measures. Do you think that these measures are targeted enough to cater for those young people who are really eager to get on the housing ladder? Do you think this will ameliorate their discontent and disaffection? Well, first of all, I have completed my duty visit. Last year, because of COVID, I couldn't attend the duty visit physically, and this year I went to Beijing to do my duty visit And I was really delighted about that. And that's the last duty visit in my term. The two leaders gave recognition to the work of the SAR government. And this is really an encouragement to myself and my governing team. As to the next government or next chief executive, I have to respect the wishes of the next administration. But as I always said, there is a strong element of continuity in our policy, like the Northern Metropolis, the Lantau Tomorrow Vision, the Kao Yi Chao reclamation, and the housing issue. I'm sure any chief executive would put these very top on the agenda. You mentioned yesterday the National Security Department made some arrests. As usual, I would not comment on this, and nor should any official be commenting on anything that is being investigated by the law enforcement agencies. And the case will go into a sub judice period pretty soon. I don't think we should be at liberty to comment on this willy-nilly. Now, your question a moment ago was a leading question. You said that this is to tackle the opposition media. Now, this is not the case. Nothing can be further from the truth. That this is an enforcement work. It's got nothing to do with the media work. I don't think I can comment on any cases under investigation except to highlight some principles, which I've said many times. Every time we have law enforcement action, there are some concerns raised. Now, first, Hong Kong is the place where we have rule of law. This is Hong Kong's foundation, and this is a foundation on which Hong Kong thrives. We have to maintain a rule of law, just as we have to maintain national security and social order. And the law has to be observed, the law has to be enforced, and what if violating the law must be held to account. This principle will not be undermined because of anybody's status or any particular circumstances.
It's not like what you said, that we're targeting a particular media organization or media organization with a certain stance. What we target is activities that contravene the law, and the action taken is based on investigation, the decision of the Department of Justice, and then the case will be given to the court to make a ruling. The court will impartially make a ruling based on the evidence and the facts. Well, I noticed that yesterday and today there are overseas media organizations and foreign governments making comments without all the facts. They jump to conclusions saying that the Hong Kong government should release all arrestees. These governments, including their senior officials themselves, are actually trampling the rule of law by saying that under the basic law there is full protection of human rights and our fundamental rights. On a number of occasions, and several chief justices, whether it's in the legal year opening or other occasions, stressed that the protection of human rights are not unfettered. In certain circumstances, they might be restricted in certain ways. So, members of the legislature and the executive have to abide by the law. How come that practitioners in the Fourth Estate claim that they can exercise the right without any restrictions? Does it mean that they're above the law? Whenever law enforcement agencies of the Hong Kong SAR government has taken actions. Some media organizations will say, regardless of the fact, that this undermined our freedom. And some people who claim to be Democrats say that this undermines democracy. I say that they have blatantly deviated from the facts. Protection of human rights are enshrined clearly in the basic law and relevant legislation. You can't simply claim that you enjoy freedom of the press and various freedoms that's why you can break the law. That simply is not acceptable. Your third question and the last part of your second question in relation to deep-seated conflicts. This is my take. Hong Kong practices the capitalist system. In the development of our economy, there will be, at the same time, other problems, say, for example, wealth gap and poverty. Over the years, we were mired in political conflict. We've lost a number of chances to resolve these issues that are close to the hearts of Hong Kong people. Now we have a different legal. I am confident that our plans will effectively resolve these problems. As I said, that as long as we can successfully implement North Metropolis as well as Kau Yi Chau reclamation under the Lantau Vision, there will be over 1 million residential units for Hong Kong people. With our work being undertaken, I'm sure that everything will go smoothly. But I'm aware that with good material lives, it doesn't mean that people will be content spiritually and in other ways. So we will make sure that we will feel the pulse of public sentiment. We will strive to forge a sense of belonging and a sense of happiness of Hong Kong people. Next question. The one on the left at the back with glasses. Good morning, Mrs. Lam. I'd like to ask, in 2021, a number of district councillors were either disqualified or resigned themselves. As a result, there has been a large number of vacancies. Some district councils have been grounded to a halt. So would you arrange by-elections or use other ways to solve this problem? Another question. Just now you said that in 2021, we've already had the national security law. Society has been brought back to stability, and we have successfully conducted 2 elections. Does it boost your confidence in the future of Hong Kong and your intention to continue to lead us? In relation to the term of the district councils in 2020, they have a term of 4 years, but as you've rightly pointed out, there are a number of district councillors who have been detained because they've broken the law, or they felt that they could not meet the requirements of patriots administering Hong Kong and hence resigned, or they could not meet the requirement of oath-taking and left. As a result, we have broken and incomplete district councils. That's why it is not ideal to make use of district councils to launch a district-based funding allocation for various projects. With the government's support, with the support of the Home Affairs panel, there will be various departments taking the place of district councils to make sure that funding allocation to districts will be effectively used. There is still a remaining term of 2 years. I have said openly that for this term of government, that is from now to the 30th of June, we are not in a position to conduct a large-scale by-election of these vacancies in the district council. It will be for the next government to decide how to handle the remaining term. By then, it will be 1.5 years of the district councils. One of the objectives of reorganization plan of the government is that the portfolio of culture and sports from the Home Affairs Bureau will be moved to a different bureau. One of the reasons is to release their capacity to better and more effectively take stock of a more effective way for district administration, to put them in a better position to better meet the needs and aspirations of people living in various districts. I'm sure that the Home Affairs Bureau will start pondering over that. But for other matters, it will be for the next government. I did a review with you for 2021 today because there are a number of things that are worth mentioning. Quite a number of them are positive ones. Say, for example, better implementation of one country, two systems, the improved electoral system, and stabilizing the pandemic being stabilized so that our economy can start to revive. I do hope that we will ride on these positive paths and continue. Well, this will be a good opening for the next government. Next question. The one on the front in pink.
Two questions from China Daily. The FCC and the EU's External Affairs Divisions called the police action against the Stand News a further blow to press freedom in Hong Kong. What's your take on that? And second one, what do you make of their comments that the police action will continue to chill the media environment in the city? Thank you.
As I have responded to a question in Cantonese, as usual, I will not comment on the details of a case undertaken by a law enforcement agency, especially one which will shortly go into the judicial proceedings. So I'm not going to comment on the case, but I would outline, in response to your questions, a couple of principles. And these are very important principles that I have repeatedly mentioned in response to similar concerns in the past 2 years. One is Hong Kong is very proud of being a place where there is strong rule of law. And this underlines Hong Kong's success as an international financial and business center. And as a place which is proud of the rule of law, of course, we have to use legislation where there are obvious bridges, offenses under the relevant legislation. So what the law enforcement agencies have done, including the police, in arresting people who are suspicious of committing offenses under the crimes ordinance or the national security law, is their legitimate duty. So they are doing this in accordance with the law, with the evidence they have collated and the investigations that they have done, and I believe also with some legal advice. So following the police investigation, the case will then be passed to the Department of Justice to decide in an independent way whether prosecutions should be laid. And ultimately, the case, the prosecution will go to the courts, and we all understand and appreciate that there is judicial independence in Hong Kong, and the judges will decide on the cases in an independent manner without any interference, simply based on the law and based on the evidence put in front of them. So these actions are law enforcement actions. These actions have nothing to do with so-called suppression of press freedom or suppression of democracy, as some will put it. So I would say that nobody should associate law enforcement actions by the police department with the freedom of the press. I just read something. There was a statement issued by the Secretary of State of the United States. And again, they sort of made all sorts of allegations and accusations about this incident. There was this very short phrase in the statement. He said that journalism is not sedition. Well, I agree with that. Journalism is not sedition. But seditious acts and activities and inciting other people through public acts and activities could not be condoned under the guise of news reporting. It should be very clear what is reporting of news and what is seditious acts or activities to undermine national security. So that was my response to the recent incident. And I believe that people by now should realize that it is so very important to adhere to the rule of law in Hong Kong, to make sure that offenses are being taken very seriously, because we have all suffered as a result of a lot of non-law-abiding activities in the latter half of 2019. And nobody in Hong Kong wanted to see that happening again. Thank you.
下一條提問。
Next question. The gentleman in the jacket.
Over the past year, opposition figures were arrested under the national security law. Civil groups disbanded one after another. There was a new electoral system implemented in Hong Kong, and some Hong Kong people also left Hong Kong to other countries. How would you assess Hong Kong being a better place to live in and work now when compared to 2017 when you first took office? And secondly, you also said in your PowerPoint just now that you will begin a public consultation on Article 23. How likely do you think the law can be passed before your term ends? Thank you.
If you ask me, I think Hong Kong in 2021 is now in a much better state than when I took office in July 2017. One, fundamentally, is because we are now back on the right track of one country, two systems. And one country, two systems right track require upholding the principle of one country, requires Hong Kong to safeguard national security, requires that a very important part of the political system, that is the Legislative Council, comprises of people who are patriotic. We are not suggesting that they could not criticize the government or hold a different opinion on many of the things that we will put to LegCo, but they have to be patriotic. If members of a Legislative Council were not patriotic, they could use that occasion and furthermore to collude with foreign forces to subvert the government of the Hong Kong SAR and the government of the Central People's Government. So I think on that particular score, Hong Kong is now a much safer place. And I believe that with the support of the Central People's Government, in all respects, particularly in integration with the mainland development, in the 14th Five-Year Plan, in the Greater Bay Area, there are abundant opportunities in front of us for us to seize, which will help to improve Hong Kong's economy and improve people's livelihood. So that is a very simple way to answer your question. About enacting local legislation under Basic Law Article 23, this is our constitutional duty. We have not done it for over 2 decades. It is time that we should do it, because while the national security law has been promulgated and implemented in Hong Kong for 1.5 years, there are still other offenses relating to national security that requires new local legislation. What I have said, of course, in consultation with the Secretary for Security, who is doing all the preparatory work, is to commence the public consultation within my term. And that is, in the next 6 months, we will start the consultation, laying out the details of the proposed amendments to the legislation and so on. I am not very optimistic that we could actually pass the law, because that would require completing everything. That is public consultation, drafting of the bill, presenting the bill to Legislative Council, the setting up of a Bills Committee, and the Bills Committee scrutinizing the bill and maybe even conducting their own consultations, and then clause by clause examination, and then second reading and third reading. I just don't see, even by looking at the calendar and calculating the sittings, I just don't see how that could be accomplished. But I have heard some electrical members-elect expressing the desire that they will cooperate in order to expedite the passing of a legislation. I certainly welcome that, but I would still adhere importance to a more thorough discussion in society before we enact the law. So let's see how we interact with the new Legislative Council to see how quickly we could put BL 23 into our law books. Thank you.
答多兩位。
Two more questions. The one in grey at the back, please. Mrs. Lam, HKEJ, Economic Channel. I'd like to follow up on the Stan News issue. In answer to the question, you mentioned that the seditious remarks and so on. Now, what is causing resentment against the government? Now, earlier you banned the dining in premises, and that caused a lot of resentment. And in this case, there are top executives in the outlet that allegedly made seditious remarks, criminalizing words. Now, one of the arrestees was Christine Fang, the CEO of the HKCSS, a former CEO. How do you feel about that? Do you feel that she is one of the person who would be colluding in the publication of seditious materials? That the CE election is 3 months away, and you still haven't indicated whether you're going to be seeking another term in office. And do you think this is one of your plans, or what difficulties do you have for you not to say anything about it?
3 questions. First, sedition is a legal term. I can't possibly, standing here, tell you in details what constitutes sedition and what not. I believe that there are authorities and there will be new case rulings in the future. Most important thing is to look at the provisions in the law, the evidence, and the case set out by the defense and the prosecution. So I'm afraid I cannot answer your question. Similarly, I will not comment anything in relation to what I think about a certain person in a certain case being arrested. As far as I know, that the nomination period for the next chief executive election will start on the 15th of March, and the election will take place on the 27th of March. Last question for today. I'm from cable TV. I'd also to ask about something you said. Well, there are still 310 initiatives in the policy address that have not been implemented. You said continuity is very important. If you're not going to seek re-election, why not? What is the stance of the central authorities? Yesterday, the police arrested people from Stan News using a colonial law. In the white paper of the State Council, they criticized that this colonial law was used to seriously undermine free press freedom. Now this offense is used. Is it the case that the police is using this to shrink the room for press to operate? Previously, Elsie Leung said that practitioners in the press should not fear. However, there are 2 media organizations that have been forced to close down because of a series of arrests. Is it the case that the time's different now? That's why they have contradicted themselves? I'd like to say that in Hong Kong, we don't have political parties administering the government in Hong Kong. And that's why I said that there needs to be continuity. Promises made by previous government will have to be taken upon by the next government, especially initiatives that are strongly supported by the public. So it won't be the case that with a change of government, everything will restart. Well, I was once a secretary for a bureau, and I was once a chief secretary, and now I am chief executive. I can tell you that there is a strong element of continuity. Today is about a review of 2021 and not about my term as the chief executive. I will have an opportunity to tell you what I think about my work as the chief executive. As I've said that I'm not going to comment on individual cases, but please bear in mind that human rights and freedom are not unfettered. Freedom of speech is not something that you can use to absolve you if you breach the law, but package yourself as a practitioner in the press. We need to see through that and be able to tell what's actually happening. As I've said in reply to another reporter, I cannot give you a definition of sedition. I respect the work of reporters. I respect their criticism, their attacks, and their comments. Some people said that because of a chilling effect, people have clammed up because they're too afraid to criticize the government. But that's not what I could see. I could still see criticisms and comments against me. So, say, for example, there is a letter to the editor to a newspaper in English that criticized me. Well, you can express your views if you are unhappy with the work of a certain government official. I'm sure that the court will give you clearer guidelines. This has nothing to do with freedom of the press. I'll ask you, reporters, to continue to do your duty, to monitor the work of the legislature and the executive, and to be a professional reporter. Thank you.
多謝晒大家，唔該。
Thank you.